A good evening and welcome to On the Spot. Today we have an exclusive interview with the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Oulanyah. Thank you so much for giving us the time of day and allowing to sit with us. Maybe to start off, East Africa has just lost a very strong man in John Magufuli. Have you sent any condolences? And if what are your condolences like? What do you remember him for mostly?
Well, a very sad thing has happened to the region, to Tanzania itself, and to Africa, because Magufuli represented a very down-to-earth way of leadership. The way he mixed with people, the way he spoke to them, the way he inspired them, but also the way he was firm on certain things. I remember when he just decided that there will be no foreign trips for all government officials. There were meetings I used to attend with the members of parliament from Tanzania, particularly Deputy Speaker of that parliament. There were meetings, the ACP EU meetings that we used to have. They didn't come for a whole year. It was very firm on some of those things. And issues of corruption, it was very firm. And the issues of sticking to the basic. When he did the standard gauge railway thing in Tanzania, I think it was the cheapest in the history of construction of the standard gauge railway system. It's because he insisted that things needed to be done right, without excesses. And so that was the man in the person of President Magufuli. His passing, it's very sad. But you see, above that, there's something else that the Tanzanian people have demonstrated to us. I remember when the Malawian president died in office, and they were fidgeting with who should take over. His vice was a lady who had changed parties. And the situation was such that they did not want her to take over. They wanted somebody else to take over, and yet the constitution said something else. It took phone calls from different people. So the rules are set before the game, not during, not after the game. So once the constitution has set the rules of succession, stick by it. Because the minute you alter the rules because of convenience, you introduce uncertainties in the system. And that is not good. So Malawian people and the leadership then reluctantly went back to uphold what was provided for in the constitution. How can you be reluctant about constitutional provisions? But eventually the constitution prevailed, and the vice president became president, which was a good thing. Tanzania has demonstrated something else. That on that matter you cannot have a debate. It's as day follows night. The president has passed on in office. The constitution says somebody else should take over. And that is the certainty that the law imposes. We will stick by it. That is a lesson we should all pick, and applaud the people of Tanzania for doing that, and the leaders in Tanzania. They have lost a great man, but they have responded to the loss with clarity, and that's very good for me. Yes.
Would you say that the fabric that Tanzania has used to keep its constitution strong should also apply to Uganda here?
You see, constitutions are not created for lightly. It's the grand norm. It determines the way the governance systems should function. The rest of the things rest on the constitution. The British say they believe in the constitution so much, but they have never had the courage to write one. That means the constitution is not really a document. These are principles ingrained in people's DNA. that certain things are certain because our fundamental beliefs rest on those principles. And the rest of the laws, the policies that stem out of them are based on these core principles that we all believe in, written or unwritten. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing for us to witness this in Africa, which is usually looked at as one of those continents where it's not the rule of law, but the law of rulers that prevail.
You've risen from Omoro as a young boy, become a member of parliament, deputy speaker for 10 years. You definitely have a say on what fundamental principles Uganda has. If you were to describe them, what would those principles be?
You see, there is the governance system, as I said, must create predictability and certainty. People must know what will happen when certain things happen. That's the certainty we talk about. And the Constitution should be able to give that clarity. And the knowledge that people will stick by that is even more comforting than the presence of that principle itself. If you know that whatever happens, people stick by it, that is very, very, very comforting. So we govern people's rights, we govern people's interests, and we govern power relations. And these three are the foundations of conflicts. You have rights-based conflicts, you have interest-based conflicts, and then you have power-based conflicts. If there is any indication that even if the rights-based conflict has a tendency of upsetting the power structure, it becomes a power-based conflict. And the same applies to interest-based conflicts. So the Constitution takes care of these situations. How you manage the structure of governance. Who is in charge of what? What mandates do you give that person? What systems do we have to check that person's operations? You will realize that the entire human race is governed by what we call human discretion. The law will not go to the tail. A lot of it is by discretion. The exercise of discretion, discretionary powers. That's the human element in management, and that's the human element. That cannot be written in the Constitution. If they give me the discretionary power to take some decisions, they expect me to use it in a way that promotes the national interest and in our case promotes service delivery to our people. So once that is uncertain, then the space everybody's looking on. And you know what they're waiting for? For you to make a mistake. And then they jump in. But once it is clear that once you are there, it's certain what will happen, the events that will come after, in case certain things happen, people are at peace because they know there's certainty and there's predictability.
Certainty and predictability, those are the two things that I pick out the most. Yeah. And yet, Parliament, the one where you've been Deputy Speaker, has made the Constitution a little bit uncertain. Ugandans now are not sure about what transition looks like. Our transition now rests within the executive. We're not sure now about the separation of powers between the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. It gets more uncertain with the long stay of the president. Would you say that the certainty and predictability of Uganda has been eroded by the amendments to the Constitution in Parliament?
You see, constitutions are not cast in stone. And the principles that govern the fundamentals shift. For example, we have reviewed the Constitution a few times. If you look from 1962, 1963, 1966, and then there was a period where we were governing without the law, and then we came back to the law in 1980. The Constitution was there, frameworks were there, and then in 1995, the Constitution that we use now is what is still in force, with lots of reviews and changes. If you see what the Constitutional Review Commission tried to do, was to go to the people. What are the fundamentals? And fundamentals are really fundamentals. Fundamentals are not managerial. Fundamentals, you see, you have the columns of a building, the outside walls, the strong walls of the building, those are the pillars. We're sitting here now. We can decide to sit the other way. That's not a fundamental principle. But if where we want to sit now would have to require us to break this wall, then that's a fundamental change in the structure of how we do. But if it's only because we want to remove this glass door from here, it's different. Repartition this building is different. If it's because we want this table to face the other side, it's different. If it requires us to break that wall, then it becomes a fundamental thing that we must do. And some changes require breaking walls. And when they require breaking walls, then you go to the fundamentals and cause those changes there. But it must be agreed upon. Once it's agreed upon, well, it's agreed upon. So we do it, say, okay, let's break this wall. You call the engineers, they do the structural things. You make sure that the wall, when finally broken, will not interfere with the structural things of the Constitution. And that's why the Constitution is classified in different ways. There are those fundamental places where for you to change them, you require a referendum. That is where Ugandans believe. This one, do not think about it until we come back, all of us, to agree upon it. And then you say, this one will be by ratification by district councils. They are lighter. Maybe they require some changes, but it only requires ratification by the district council, from the district councils. This set here, you can play about with. They're not that fundamental. You can play about with them. You can change them. Each time there's need, you can change them, so on and so forth. But there are those that for you to change, you have to have a referendum. Those are separated in the Constitution. And I was the chair of the legal committee in 2004 and 2005, where a lot of review of the Constitution was done. But I can tell you, even when we were doing that, none went to the fundamentals. None went to the structure of what comes to be known as the Constitution. So none of the changes we made in the Constitution required a referendum. The only referendum that took place during that time was already in the Constitution. The shift from a movement political system to a multi-party political system required a referendum. And that was by dictate of the Constitution itself. So it was clear that if you want to change systems of politics in this country, you must go to the people. And that's what happened. And the Parliament will do a resolution, but that resolution has to be adopted by the whole country, not just Parliament. And that's what happened in 2005 when we changed from the movement political system under Article 74, I think, to the multi-party political system. And the chief architect of the campaign was President Museveni. Surprisingly, it was President Museveni who campaigned very hard that we should now go multi-party. So like I said, the Constitution, you can change it. But what are you changing in the Constitution? How will it affect the structure of governance in the country? Does it go to the fundamentals that it requires us to break a column of a building? Or is it about a wall or the partitions that are in the building?
Honorable Speaker.
So to that extent, you can say this. The fundamentals remain certain. There are certain things you cannot do. And some of them are stated in the Constitution. For example, you cannot declare a one-party state. You cannot. For you to do that, you will now need to destroy the entire document for you to make a one-party state, because it's a fundamental principle in the Constitution. Uganda will be governed by either movement political system or a multi-party political system, but never a one-party state. You will never force people to have one religion. freedom of worship. Let people believe in whatever they are. For as long as the harmonizing factor is, it doesn't make you have conflict with other people. That's the only limitation. Enjoy your rights for as long as you want.
Honourable Speaker, I just wanted to ask you, one of the strongest fundamentals in that Constitution, 45, freedom from degrading treatment, torture and inhuman. Today, there's many people missing. You have ministers on the floor of Parliament where you sit saying, we have them. They haven't produced them in a court of law. There's complaints of torture. Wouldn't you argue that a fundament of the Constitution is being taken away?
That is true. That is true. And like I said, the rights, their interest, and then their power relations. That's a question of rights. In the enjoyment of my rights and freedoms, I cannot affect another person's right negatively. The Constitution does not allow that. But you see that people act in breach. But systems should be in place that can be invoked to deal with that. That's why the Constitution said, do not kill. But then they also qualify to lawful killing, where it is by order of the court or something like that. But if I should go and kill somebody, it's dead against the Constitution, one of the fundamental. The right to life is protected by the Constitution. So the things that are happening, inhuman degrading treatments, the arrest of people, and it's not right. It's not right. And I don't think anybody in the structure of government should entertain that, should even attempt to explain it or defend it. It cannot be defended. No, it's not. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Parliament. Would you say you've ever had a dark day in Parliament? What day was that?
No, I don't know.
You've never had a dark day?
When I'm like presiding?
Yes.
No, I've had difficult days, but not dark
not
days.
Dark days. There's a difficult day I'd like to remind you. When members of Parliament didn't show up on time, and you had an almost 20-minute rant about timekeeping, about the culture of debate. What principles, when you sit in the seat of the Speaker, what principles do you stand for when you're holding that seat?
Respecting others. God gave each one of us 24 hours. So if we agree that a matter is going to be handled at this time, I rearrange my 24 hours to accommodate that engagement. If by some means you come and distort this arrangement, you are misapplying my 24 hours. So it's just out of courtesy and respect for other people that if you agree that a meeting should start at 2, it should start at 2. But I should not allow my own other engagements to interfere with what we have agreed, because by that agreement, I have asked you to suspend everything else from your 24 hours and let us use part of our 24 hours to deal with this matter. And then you show up 30 minutes late. That means you have deeply affected my schedule of how I use my 24 hours that God has given to me and also to you. You are using your own misgivings to interfere with my own structure of management of my own 24 hours. This disrespectful. So it's a principle I hold quite firmly. If you tell me a time, I'll follow that time. So that my 24 hours, I plan and use by what I think is right.
What other principle do you stand for when you have that seat?
When I sit at that seat, the other principle is no half measures. If you're doing something, finish it. And that's what I believe. There should be no half measures where nobody is certain about what you have done. Whatever you do, it may be a good thing. It may be a bad thing. But it should be clear that it is this. So that's why I am very easy it's very easy to predict me. Because you know that on that, Oulanyah will do this. Because you know that is a clear person. He does not have to pretend. He does not mean black when he actually means white. He's clear about what he wants to do. So that, you leave people in no doubt about what you are going to do. If it is a good thing, you do it. If it turns out that it's bad for other people, but in your DNA you believe it's the right thing, you do it. And how do I get to this? One, is it okay with God? Is it okay with the law? Will I sleep well when I finish that? Once the three are harmonized, you won't shift me. You will not. Doesn't matter what you do. You can light a fire under my chair, but once the three are fitted together, I will move, and nothing can stop me.
When you say, is it okay with God, is it okay with the law? I remember the day of the voting on the age limit. Of course, you are not the one in the chair. The speaker was in the chair. Members of parliament were beaten right before the eyes of the speaker. The debate came to a halt because it had been breached by security services whom the parliament cannot account for. Would you say that that was good measure? Was it within the law? Was it right with God for parliament to continue a debate and vote on it, knowing that some of their members were in crotchets, some of them were still under arrest, others were nursing broken backs? Is that a culture of debate that you'd like to have in parliament, that we must debate regardless of whatever?
No, I think that would be for the person who presided at time to explain. I was not there. Yeah.
But what would you have done if you were speaker?
No, I was not there, so let's not speculate. I was not there, so I cannot think about it. Yeah. If I was there, I would have done what I would have done, but I was not there.
Let's talk about the culture of debate in parliament. The average attendance of parliament now is down to 83 members of parliament, according to research. You have almost 425 members of parliament, now going to 500. How do you have only 80 to 83 people attending parliament every day?
You see, when you give, when everybody has to do it, everybody thinks somebody else is going to do it. That's the challenge that you have. That's where big numbers become a challenge, because you think Raymond will be there, Herbert will be there, Oulanyah will be there. And they're also thinking the other way. So-and-so will be there, because the numbers are big. So in your heart you think, anyway, the others are going to go. For me, I have other engagements. In the end, nobody turns up. It's a big challenge. But also, the bigger thing is, this country is so politicized that every day of your life you are doing something related to elections. It becomes worse when an election is coming. That becomes a serious problem. We start campaigns 2 years before the next elections, because as you sit in parliament, people are busy running around their constituency. And the phone calls are coming in. I don't think the mobile phones have helped much in this. You are there sitting, then a message comes. So-and-so was here and he was saying this. So-and-so was here and he was saying this. Then you press the panic button. You start running around, go there. By doing that, so the last 2 years of parliament really is a huge challenge. So if we are judging attendance by that, then that would be an explanation. Secondly, is what is going to be discussed. If there are fundamental things that impact on the lives of people, I tell you, people show up to be counted. But if most of the time the discussions are around nothing, then very few people will come to discuss nothing.
Is this a dent on government because they present business before parliament? Would you say that some business is not important to the nation, so people don't show up?
You see, we spend most of the, somebody should do the statistics in a day, so, I mean, should do this research so that we can speak from point of correct information. In an average sitting of 4 hours of parliament, you can almost say over 60% of that, 70% of that is done in politicking. It's politicking. And one time I challenged the Minister of Finance, I said, when are you going to bring us discussions in relation to things that put food on people's tables, that affect people directly? Discussion of things to do with how people change their situations. Are we just going to focus on regulating people's lives, or should we start focusing on facilitating how people operate? When are you bringing these discussions so that we can have a parliament that talks about the interests of the people? I've asked these questions before in the Speaker's chair. When are you going to use the stability that this country has had as a basis for raising money? They are called things called long bonds, medium-term bonds, that are specifically guaranteed by states because of the stability of their currency and the stability of their governance. There's no uncertainty in what will happen in 5 years, in 10 years. So when government issues a bond, that bond, piece of paper, people trade in, raise money in the world market, and by the time you're retiring the bond, the infrastructure is built, the bridges are done, the dams are done, without having to borrow money from anybody. When are we going to have these discussions about things that affect people's lives? And I also one time said, can we just one time, block of 1 week, and just talk about what we want to see this country be in 5 years, in 4 years, in 3 years. Just have a general debate, so that we beat out all these thoughts that keep lingering in our minds about the future of our country. Because like I keep saying, we talk about the future, but the future is here. The questions we ask are important about the future. And I keep saying, today was yesterday's tomorrow, and it's here. So the future cannot be something ideal that you have to prepare for. Every day, you are in the future. Every day that comes, you are in the future. So we live in the future. So we cannot overplan for a future when the future is here. What we do now will shape what will happen tomorrow and the next day. So when are we going to have these honest discussions about a future we live in? If you are talking about corruption, what are we going to do about that? What discussions are we going to have? What frank discussions are we going to have about that? If you are talking about our budget, how much of the money we put in the budget actually go to implement those things we agreed in the budget? How much of it just finds their way out of the system and we see buildings showing up and connecting Entebbe and Kampala? How much of it is removed from the public purposes into private purposes? When are we going to have these frank discussions? And I keep saying, each time we say corruption, corruption, without asking ourselves, by the way, who is the corrupt person? It becomes a distant call. Oh, there's corruption in the country. There's corruption in the country. But who are the corrupt people? There are people who live in your houses. They are your cousins. They are your brothers, probably mothers, probably fathers. They are people connected as people we know. The people who come to our churches and occupy the front benches because they give. And the pastor will say, bless the hands that give, and may where you remove these be filled. And they occupy the front benches. When will we reach a state where if we know that somebody has been practicing corruption and he comes and sits near us, we leave? But we'll be too happy to have free beers. Give a full round. give a full. We know that the money for the full round has been taken from some road, from some health center, from some school. But we are here enjoying it, full round, full round, full round. When are we going to say, full round, stop? You stole the money, or we suspect you to have it. Please have your full round. We are leaving. When are we going to start resenting people who are engaged in these things? When? It's a word of mouth. There's corruption. We are fighting corruption. Really? Tell that person, your son, who finished school yesterday, but is building a double-storied building. Where did you get that money from? But instead, we tell our son who has not been able to build anything, we say, but so-and-so's son has already put a house. For you, what did you study? We put our children under pressure to engage in corrupt practices so that they are like other people's children. And when I started legal practice, everybody wanted to have a car. I mean, how do you have a car when you have not earned? In a legitimate way. How do you just have a car? You explain that to me. I started practicing law in 1997 and I had good clientele. I had good connections. By the January of the year, I had finished my bills for the whole year because I had retainers that were good. I have been in these public offices for so long, but I'm just beginning to build a house in the village. Everybody says, what is this man? I built a house 2 years ago in the trading center, my trading center in the village. The first thing ever. I have one house in Kampala, which I built. And I built because my people told me, you are going to finish all your money. I had savings before I joined parliament in 2001. 2002, I started building. And I finished it by 2003. That's where I live now. I've not built any other house in Kampala. Now tell me how the people I went to school with are able to own half the town.
But Speaker, some of these people are on the front benches of Parliament. These are people you should be telling this.
I am telling you this because it's a public communication. And I'm asking you this that instead of focusing on all the little things, these are the fundamentals we should start putting on the airwaves, TVs, instead of these petty scandals and promoting fights and little things like that. Why don't we have an honest discussion? Why don't you call people and engage them? What is your view about this thing called corruption? So that there's a public debate about the elephant in the room. But we like going around things, and I'm just saying, when shall we start having very honest discussions about certain things that go in this?
All right, Speaker, let's take a very short break, but when we come back, we get into another honest discussion about the NRM and the Northern Uganda vote. Thank you so much. Let's take a break. Thank you so much for staying with us on The Sport. Honourable Speaker, let's talk about the Northern Uganda vote and the National Resistance Movement. Starting with your ascension to the Central Executive Committee. It was met with a little resistance at first, but eventually you presided over and became a member of SEC. How would you describe the ruling party now after the 2021 election?
I think we have a good ground as NRM. But in politics, you will only have to ask the question, how do you sustain it? How do you maintain it? I think that's what now we need to think about and deal with. The biggest challenge that I see, because post-election, there's a big problem of managing expectations. And if you fail on how you manage those expectations, then you begin having a challenge. the thing that we need to do is try our best to manage expectations. Not so much about what we said, but it's so much about, okay, we have done this. We expect this. We have given, give. How you manage those expectations can be a big challenge. When members of parliament fight for positions and really do everything possible to come into parliament, and they have come to parliament, as leaders of the party, we should manage their expectations. As people who are elected, they should also manage their constituents' expectations. You get the point? Because everybody comes with expectations. And the way you consolidate things is when you resonate well with the expectation. They don't expect you to achieve it 100%. They expect you to at least show that you're moving in that direction. Then they'll be happy. Then they'll say, okay, they'll give you time, the benefit of time to deal with the rest of the things. So that's the biggest challenge we're going to face with our people from the region that have now moved. And the transition has been over time. Northern Uganda, you can say from 1971, really. We have had these challenges. Before 1971, I can tell you this. Northern Uganda, then stretching from West Nile to Karamoja. That's West Nile, Acholi, Lango, Karamoja. It was like one block of people. The leaders used to move left or right and center. They used to share things. Moroto Road was passing through Gulu. Up to now, it's called Moroto Road. Passes through my village. It was like one person, one people. Their aspirations were the same. Their desires, expectations, and the things they put forward were essentially the same. 1971 happened. What did it do? West Nile against the rest of Northern Uganda. 1985, what happened? Acholi against Lao. So a rift was introduced in our region, disrupting our unity. The wars, the insecurity, the instability, the cattle rustling, and all these other things have all combined to stagnate the region socially and economically. We come with a message of unity. We come with a message of socioeconomic transformation. We come with that message of rebuilding the fundamentals that made that region strong. In 1968, Adimola's farm had students coming from Ohio in the US to come and do research. 45 tractors in one farm. First combines harvester in East and Central Africa was in Adimola's farm. 1968. In 1968, Adimola could meet European import standards from harvest of fresh vegetables and fruit to storage in cold rooms within 7 minutes. In the middle of nowhere in Acholi there was such a farm existing, and in so many places in the northern region. We have been there. It's something our parents lived, they saw, and some of us saw a little bit of it. It's all gone. How do we get back to what it was and even exceed? The land is there. If you go to Nwaya now, go and look at the machines that these people have had in partnership with the others, what they are doing there. Look at the acreage of what is under cultivation. You'll be shocked. How do we make that region start taking again like it was? that is the expectation that will impose a challenge, unless we begin making a journey in that direction. And the wars, you can blame so many people for what has transpired from 1971, 85, Joseph Kony, all the others, they are to blame. Now, the guns have provisionally gone silent, and the silence of the guns have caused something that never used to sound loud, to sound very loud now. The guns are silent so many things. Now that the guns are silent, a lot of what used not to be talked about are now being talked about. Issues of human rights. We made a shift from humanitarian rights to now human rights, because people are now beginning to engage in productive activities and things like that. Yes, we have had programs that are specific to try and uplift. I have been over the few days reviewing the NUSAF programs and its successes and failures, and the need for it to continue for a bit of time until some of these things are shifted. If you look at the map of Uganda, the poverty map of Uganda right now, as I speak, I have the things on my laptop. 2012, 2013, there was a wave that came past the middle center of Uganda. The rest of the upper part of Uganda, Karamoja, Cholilango, bit of Bunyoro, bit of Sebei, were in the dark poverty, deep poverty areas. 10 years later, 2017 plus, the light had moved, but the darkness still remains on the upper side of that region. The expectation of those people is that this lighter wave should cover the rest of northern region. And tax policies changes in the law, and changes in the budget for us to be able to achieve this. So the government of Uganda needs to take this as one of those things. Okay, if the excuse was because there was not so much support coming from that belt. Now it is. We have demonstrated that we are ready and we are going to work together. You do something about the situation.
Doesn't that raise a very dangerous question? Because the central Uganda didn't vote for the National Justice Movement, which won the elections. Does that mean that they should be starved of budgetary allocation?
The reasons are different. The reasons are different. For them, they have been voting the way they have been voting. For them, they have benefited the way they have been benefiting, the way they have grown. And make no mistake, by the way, the central here has a lot of people. A lot of the people that have made the central to be what it is, some of them come from northern Uganda. So I'm not talking about the central as a tribe. No, I'm not. Please don't make that mistake. I'm talking about as a place where the capital city is placed, where all these foreign people, all the big boys, big girls are, and all the activities, the rich ones are. So that alters the proximity to, that alters the way the society around it benefits from it. Proximity to a particular thing.
But do you worry that your party, the NRM, is not addressing the anxieties of young people, unemployment, people failing to access education, people failing to access health? Do you worry about those things, that they could very well end the NRM as a party in power?
That is part of what we must do. That is part of what we have tried to do. And success levels in that area have been high. You can't say it has not happened. That would be unfair. What has happened is that the intention, the desire of the party to achieve certain things are affected by so many things. You give a bag of groundnuts to be taken to the village. Some people are eating part of it on the way. By the time it reaches there, it's now half a sack. And yet, by the structure of the policy, you needed this amount of money to deal with this set of problems. Now, if only half of it comes, then you can only deal with half of the problem. Probably start a building and stop.
Are you admitting to corruption within the
Of course
NRM
there's
party?
corruption. And you know it, I've said it before. Of course there's corruption, not within the NRM, in the country. And take it from me, some districts are not led by NRM. Yes, let's accept the situation as it is, that society, I mean, corruption in this country is not a political party issue. It's a social issue for the entire country. And we need to face it. Like the minute you start to give the blame that, oh, it is the NRM that is corrupt, you make that mistake. A lot of the districts in the country are not under NRM. And performance indicators show that they have not done very well as well. So it's not a party thing. I don't want to make that mistake. So I'm not even saying it's going to be a question of reward. I'm saying, for example, in the case of Karamoja, the insecurity, which is there right now even. You tell people, move this thing, go and do the following things in Karamoja. People say, no, it's insecure. We fear for our lives. How do we deal with those things that have been excuses for interventions to be able to make the region access what it must in order to get out of poverty? And incidentally, they are very effective people. If you go to the Minister of Gender and do a study of the Youth Livelihood Fund, you'd be shocked which region has performed best. It's Karamoja. Doesn't that surprise you? The Karamoja sub-region has performed best in the country in terms of receiving money, utilizing it, and returning. It has performed. The last time I read the report, they were the best in the country. But that's a small intervention for young people in a limited way. It faces challenges of accessibility and so many other complications with this thing. So, youth unemployment is a much bigger issue. It has to do with the overall economy. How is the economy performing? Because if the economy performs well, there's entrepreneurship growth, industries grow, and all these other things. You attract people from outside, they invest, the capital capacity of the country grows. All those people who are growing industries, enlarging, mechanizing their farms and things, will require manpower. And then you bring them in, you create more jobs. Because the total employment capacity of the government in Uganda maybe now it's about 500,000 people, not even 1 million people.
That's so excluding the political service.
Everything, put everything together.
No, the political service, together with the political service.
No, I'm talking about employment. We're talking about
yes.
employment. I hope you're not saying I am employed as a member of parliament.
No, but you draw taxpayers' money for,
no, I'm
for
talking
a salary,
about,
which makes
it. I'm talking about employment. That's not
yes.
employment. That's not
okay.
that's not a job within what we're talking about, unemployment.
Okay.
The government infrastructure, the military, the police, the teachers, civil servants and all that, put together are less than 500,000 people in the whole country. So even if you are to retire all of them and bring in new people, that will still be for 500,000 people only. So that is not the solution. Government employment is not the solution. The solution rests with the industries. You have roofings. How many people is roofings employing? And how did roofings come about? Roofings came about because the environment changed. There was peace, there was security and stability, and therefore they could move capital. The environment became less risky, and then they can put all this money.
Honourable Speaker, if I could challenge you on that.
Yes.
Young entrepreneurs are complaining that the parliament, which you preside over on some days, is taxing them to the ground.
No,
increasingly approving taxes that make young entrepreneurship hard to achieve in this country.
You see, even tax, you see, I engage with these people. It's even beyond tax. Let me give an example. I was talking to some young people, engineers. And you'll find that the problem is actually not tax when you talk about it. I talked to this group of young engineers. Guess what they told me? They said, do you know we cannot get government contracts? I said, why? He said, in order for you to bid, you need returns. You need to demonstrate that you have done business into the extent of 150 million shillings. You need to show books of accounts that make you do that. You need to have tax clearance, and you have to have a history. For you to qualify, to pre-qualify for a government job. That's why the problem is not taxes.
But that sits within your parliament.
No,
That's something that parliament can amend.
You know, let me tell you something. Until this man told me, I didn't know. I did not know. And this has nothing to do with parliament. It only has something to do with the bureaucratic things that they put in terms of a requirement. That's not an act of parliament. To say that for a person to qualify for a bid, must show capacity that they have 150 million shillings on their account. That's not in any law. Yes. All I'm saying is the level of engagement has to shift. Because these young people and these young entrepreneurs don't have good access to the leaders, they suffer quietly. Now it's that access issue that we need to deal with. Be available to these young people. What are they facing? There are so many things that is not known. The people who know them would rather keep quiet about them. The people who can cause those changes don't know about them.
Speaker, this goes back to the first debate we had about
Yes.
the fundamentals and principles.
Yes,
One
yes.
of the fundamentals in the Constitution is representation.
Yes.
The only way that the public engages with the system of government is through their legislators.
Correct.
And one would argue that from 2011, when you were speaker, became deputy speaker, you had 112, I think, members of parliament. Today it's 505. One would argue that the spread out and increase in members of parliament might increase representation in parliament. But again, we see the average attendance of parliament has dropped, debate in parliament has dropped, and these are the fundamentals that we're asking for the speaker to fix so that the representation of the people is addressed. Is this something that you consider a problem that can be addressed by the Speaker of Parliament?
Not necessarily the Speaker. Not necessarily the Speaker. I think you're putting too much burden on the Speaker. The Speaker does not generate business to be discussed in Parliament. No. The Speaker processes business that is brought before Parliament. Doesn't generate business. Over 90% of the business that comes to Parliament is from the executive arm of government. Over 90%. Much little comes from the private members. Now, these are policy issues. And that is why I keep saying, if you have our Parliament engaging only in politics all the time, these important things get lost in translation. When are we going to have such issues of young engineers saying, you know what, we can't even bid, you are saying local content in the law. Yes, you have passed the law on local, but do you know what is happening? There is no local content because they require me to show that I have done business worth 150 million in the last year. So I can't bid. You get what I'm saying? So there should be a letting system for information of this nature. And that only comes when we have confidence. We have petitions coming to Parliament. Most of them, we process them. Some of the things are so detailed, so hidden there, that unless they are brought to your attention, you will not know them. You will not know them. Because government is this huge, ignorant thing. It's educated by the things that happen in the public. Otherwise, just like this table. Until you come and sit around it, it's just some furniture in the room. Until you come and sit here and start using it, writing on it, then it becomes a functional thing. So government is like, we need to activate. That's why, and it takes everybody, by the way, not just parliamentarians. Some of you have access to this information. Feed it in. Like this thing of the engineers, I have not kept quiet with it. For example, I had another discussion with another team of engineers. And they say, Honorable, and do you know why People don't clap when you talk about tarmac roads. Do you know why people don't clap that much? They're not very excited when you talk about electricity. And I say, no. Say it's because the majority of the people don't really need them. The ordinary person in a village is so concerned about the little stream that stops his children from going to school each time it rains. And that not require tarmac. What it requires are culverts. Because they don't have cars, they are going to walk. And the distance is not long. Do you know that, it's what he told me. Do you know that UNRWA only works on 15% of the road network in Uganda? Did you know that? The engineer told me this. Do you know that 85% of the road networks in this country is under what we call DOCA, District, Urban, Rural Access Roads? Do you know that UNRWA takes 3-point-something trillion, a huge percent of it is returned every financial year because it could not be absorbed because of procurement challenges and court things and things like that? And these 85% of the road network have no direct line of financing from the budget. Did you know that? Did you know that? I am telling you, I sat there speechless. And then you talk about electricity. How many of those people, some of them now have their little solar panels on their grass-thatched houses. They have power. That's all they need. Lighting. They need power only for lighting. Now, and then you come and talk about electricity connectivity. The dams that have been built. How does it translate to the over 65% of the population of Uganda who are in the villages?
But, Robert Speaker, you can't...
let me finish. Yes, let me just finish. I'm just saying...
The point I was making is that you can't complain about this the way a layman like myself would, because you sit on the sake of the national resistance movement, you're gunning for the third most powerful position in the country. What I am saying, forget about gunning for whatever. What I am saying is, even at those levels, they need information. And you have the information. And the way you bring in this information is in terms of criticism. Oh, you have not done this. Can we now begin a process where we cut the criticism? You can do criticism, fine. Just give information, like the one I'm giving you now. Do you know where it has ended up? Do you know it went to cabinet the same day? The issue of having equipment at a district that lack fuel, because all the money goes to UNRWA. Do you know the matter went to cabinet? We met on a Friday, the matter was in cabinet on Monday. Do you think President Museveni knew? He didn't know. I told the president on a Friday, I say, sir, if you could get 1 billion shillings, 1 billion, and put in a district every year, they would have enough money to power the equipment, to run around and fix the little roads that affect the majority of our population. Do you know the next Monday it was in cabinet? Now this thing of the engineers, do you know where it is going next? They just told me 3 days ago. Do you know where it is going to end up? I am going to push it to the... I said, why is this going on? Because you're talking about build Uganda, buy Uganda, build Uganda. You're talking about local content. It's a loud slogan, meaningless. Rhetoric. How do we move from rhetoric to action? How do we do that transition? Let the little engineers have access to do the little contracts. They can't build school blocks, classroom blocks, because they need it, and the thing has been given to business people. You get the point? Because the business person who is doing produce, who is doing this, can demonstrate that they have an account. But the professional engineers who have gone to school, who need these things in order to do, they can't have a record of 150 million. I just discovered it 3 days ago. Honorable Speaker, this is why I'm asking. What are you going to do about it? Because
that's exactly what I've told you. Just like
you to speak would you speak
I
like
am
the
just
leader of
giving
opposition.
no, I'm just giving you an example. When the issue of the road came, I took it to the president. Next day, it was in cabinet. This one I was told 3 days ago. I just got back yesterday at night. I'm going to put it to the people who must take action on this to facilitate the small engineers. And I'm sure it does not just apply to engineers. It applies to other professions who should be able to access government contracts and benefit from it and develop from it. They have capacities and employ more people and make the search for jobs in government less, because everybody is now becoming an entrepreneur. Everybody is taking care of the families. The poverty levels will start going down. In the past, a person who was a civil servant was in charge of a whole village, and the village was okay. Now, how do we have these persons translate them into small entrepreneurs who have capacities, and when they have the capacities and they develop, it spreads. The impact spreads to other people. They begin helping other people in the communities. That's the point I'm making here. I'm not saying, I'm not lamenting about anything. I don't know how to do that. What I am saying is there is information that is out there that needs to reach the ears of the people who design these policies. And I'm soliciting for that kind of information. And once these things come to members of parliament, it comes to us in parliament, it goes to people who design policies, sometimes it goes to the president. These changes will be made.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to take a very short break, and when we get back, we continue our conversation with Jacob Oulanyah, the Deputy Speaker of Uganda's parliament. Thank you so much for staying with On the Spot. We're still speaking to the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Oulanyah. One would say you're a rare politician. You ride bikes to Parliament. You walk in your farm in Omoro. We've seen you sparring with Golola Moses. What kind of person are you at heart?
I'm just a normal human being. I don't allow too many restrictions to surround me. I like to live a free life. And sometimes I actually suffer under the things of this security. For example, I came here, could not have coffee because they refused me to have coffee. No, really. Some of those things really don't make me very, very happy. I like to be a free person. This is the only life I have. I don't know about the other one because nobody has reported to me in a very conclusive way about what happens after. So this is the one I have and the one I know. So I would like to do everything to enjoy it. That's why I like laughter. In my other job, I think I'll do comedy.
You'll do comedy?
I'll do comedy. I enjoy it. I can make people laugh. And in the process make myself laugh. Even when I've not laughed loud, but my heart is... And when I crack jokes, I don't actually laugh at them. And that people say, it becomes funnier because
it's
of
the way of a comedy.
Yeah, because of the way I say it. I'm so calm about it and it's so funny. But inwardly, when people laugh, it really makes me happy. So I try to spend a lot of time making friends, making relationships that bring happiness. I like positive energy. I don't like negative energy. So even where I have people disagree with me, I have a standard prayer. Increase the love of those who love me and change the hearts of those who don't. Because it's good to walk into a place and everybody's laughing. Everybody, oh, you're welcome. You know, it's terrible to go into a place and everybody's looking the other side. Just imagine if every day of your life, wherever you go, people are turning and looking the other side. I think I will not live long. Even on phones, people call me, they already expect to laugh at my first statement when we start the conversation on phone. And I find that an easy way to live. So I like to live a full life. I like to eat well. I like to just be normal. If today I want to go and do boxing, I want to do it. And if I feel I need somebody to, the person who I started training with was called Paul. Paul Ziwa is very good. He's a young man. He's very good. And then, of course, I trained with this soldier. What is his name again? The one who used to fight with Golola.
Tugume.
Tugume. Just, no, not just us. I'm talking, mixing up with them. Titus. I trained with him as well, UPDF. And then Golola came. And it was fun. Golola is actually huge fun. When you train with him, he can really make you think you have more power than you have. When they ask you to, you can do better, you can punch harder. You know, it makes you, it challenges you without making you feel like you're being negatively challenged. So that's how I started working with Golola, and we are very, very happy. And he has projects that he's running, so I try to support him as well. He's very passionate about uplifting the sport and generally supporting young people. That's a spirit that not many people have. Golola has it. Moses Golola has it. Sometimes when I have to do walks, when they invite me to do a walk, I call him and we walk with him. Like the last one on the Physiotherapy Association of Uganda, we walked. We walked from, I think it's City Square, all the way to behind Mulago. The hills were a bit tough, but we were in good shape, so we didn't quite feel it, yeah.
Someone would say making people laugh, exciting 425 people, members of parliament, is not an easy job. How do you balance the days where there's heated debate from both sides of the house?
I'll give an example. There was this day, I think it was just before the thing of the constitutional amendment came. It was a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And the first day that we ever dealt with that constitutional amendment preliminaries, I was the one who did it. And by Honorable Majezi, before I traveled. And the speaker asked me, say, no, I'll take over next week, so you finish what you are doing. And one of the things I was doing was that. My good Lord, I entered chambers of parliament. And this is how I go to parliament, by the way. I read, first of all. I read everything that I'm going to do in parliament, I read. So if there are reports, I read them. If there are amendments I've proposed, I read them in advance. And I even point out where it may not fit legally with the things. I mark them in red. That when I go down there to do the committee stage of the bill, I'm able to point them out to the people processing the bill. So that day I went with an open mind like I do. I don't go with a conclusion in mind. You can't, one of the things you cannot anticipate is like driving on a new road when you're chairing parliament. It's like driving on a road you have not driven on before. That's exactly what happens in parliament. You cannot tell how the debate will shape up. You cannot tell even what the next person you are going to pick will say. That's how what is the word? How spontaneous it is. So you cannot go with a preset mind. And a lot of people believe that, before you go to chair the house, the president called. Nothing. Nothing. You're on your own.
He's never called?
No, he doesn't.
Not even a text message?
Nothing. Nothing. That now there is a matter before the house, the president calls you. No, not in my experience. 10 years, he has never called me. That we have this matter coming in the house, this is how we should. No, he has never. He has never called me. He called me, I think, once of a matter that was before the house. And the reason he called me, somebody reported to him that I refused to put the matter to vote when I had quorum. So it was not about a very positive one also. One of these overexcited people who get excited very easily, there was a matter that was quite contentious. And certain procedures had been initiated. And I came in the middle of that process. So my attention was drawn to the procedure that had been initiated, but not concluded. So I wanted everybody to speak. And sometimes I just want to exhaust everybody, exhaust every word from everybody. So that day was one such day. I think went on up to 9:30 p.m. And in conclusion, I said, I now refer this matter. Everybody expected it. The house was full. I said, I refer this matter to a committee, that it process it. This matter should be ready to Parliament. We'll start Parliament in the morning. So finish by 9, 10, it's a small, simple matter. And come back to the house. We start at 11 a.m. So the issue was, the man refused to put the thing to vote. About 10:30 p.m. I get a phone call from the president. I was sitting on the compound. I say, yes, Honorable Oulanyah? I say, yes, sir. You didn't have quorum? I said, no, sir, I had more than enough quorum. Was there a reason you did not conclude the matter? I said, sir, there were some legal issues that I needed to handle. So what are you going to do now? I said, sir. And these are the exact words I used. I said, sir, I am the commander of this ship. I want to deliver both the vessel and the passengers safe. He laughs. Okay. You go and do your thing. That was the only phone call I've ever got from the president about a matter that was before House. And because I was reported I was reported by one of the overexcited members that I frustrated a decision when there was quorum. So in the morning, I come back to Parliament at 8. 9 I was there. And 10 I was there. He called. Do you think you'll have quorum? I said, yes, sir. We agreed with the whips. They would mobilize and say, have they started meeting? I said, I don't know, sir. So when that phone call came, I was in the office. I said, no, the safest place I'm going to be, so that, because I suspected, because these are 2 phone calls, one at almost 11 at night, and now one at about 10 in the morning. So I decided to leave the office and go to the VIP room where there's no phone. I said, no, now I don't want any pressure on this thing, because the matter is now with the... But by that time, I had established that the committee was already sitting. So the chairman of the committee was Warihe, who is now minister. So they come to me. I was in the VIP room. They came to the office. They said, no, he's in the VIP room already waiting, because it was coming to 11 o'clock. Then they said, now, we have failed to agree. What do we do? I said, report that you have failed to agree. Because the matter was referred to you. It can never be resolved at committee stage, at the sectoral committees level. Report to the House that you have failed to agree. Pass the decision to the House. In fact, that's the best decision. The man was shocked. He said, you mean that is possible? And because they wanted the vote on the matter, nobody wanted a vote, and they cannot conclude. So he rushes back. He said, the speaker says, we can report that we have failed to agree on this matter. Let the House take the decision. The report was 4 lines. The rest were signatures. And they came back. I said, yes, Chair, are you ready to report on this matter? I said, yes, sir. We were unable to resolve the matter at our sectoral committee stage. However, we report that the House should take this decision. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. to deal with that situation of a referral that had been made to a committee, and I come in the middle, and I don't know about this referral, and my brief was that I was going to conduct a vote. Turns out I could not do a vote because the matter had substantially been referred to a committee. So that key was it for me. 11 o'clock I was in. Chair of the committee, please report. The matter was referred to you. I already knew the report. I'd seen a copy. So the chairman who deliberated over the matter that was referred to the committee. We had heavy discussions, but we failed to agree on any new position. The position that was in the committee and the disagreements that were presented both in the main report and the minority report is what we stand by. Good, they have reported. They have cured the other legal challenge that I had to face in case I took a decision when a matter had been substantially referred to a committee. Let's conclude the debate. Is there anybody want to say anything? After that long day, I had to remind them how fatigued this Friday morning, how fatigued everybody was yesterday. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, he got up and said, Mr. Speaker, we have said everything that needed to be said about our position. We have nothing else to say. Those who have listened, they have listened. We'll be repeating ourselves. Mr. Speaker, I move that we put the question from the opposition. And of course, my people from this other side were only excited to take a vote if they are reporting me to the president the night before. So I say, is that the position? I say, yes, let's just take a decision and move on. And of course, they started invoking bigger purposes, the spirit standing up to be counted, and all those things, the big words that they use to try and invoke people's conscience when they're about to take a major decision. So that's what happened. I put the question, and clearly the ayes had it. We took the decision, closed the session, went home. So that was the only, and he never called me again. As I speak now, he has never called me. He said I'm the one who calls him sometimes when there are situations that are not. I don't quite. I'll give you an example of just when I called him. Constitutional amendment on land, land acquisition. You remember? I don't know. Yes. If you remember that debate?
Yes, I do.
Huh? Yes. Where he had even started a campaign to move countrywide to mobilize.
He did radio campaigns.
He did radio campaigns, yes. You remember that thing with the Honorable Kotana?
Yes.
I called him. I said, Mzee, I would like to see you over a matter in Parliament. He said, come. He was in the campaign. By that time, he had come back. I went. I said, Mr. President, this constitutional amendment thing, politically is not that well. And then legally, it's not even necessary. And he said, how do you mean? I said, you know what? These are procedural matters. And it's at the tail end of the procedure. Government has taken a decision to compulsory acquire a piece of land. Chief Government Value has given it a valuation. The owner of the land disagrees with the value that has been given. We are now proposing that where that happens, government will still take over the land, but deposit that amount which has been approved by the Chief Government Value in court. How could that be a constitutional matter, sir? You have the Land Acquisition Act outlining the procedure for acquisition of land. Why don't we just amend that one and add this thing of depositing money and remove the anxiety? What do? So I'm going to throw it out. And they say, okay. And I'd say it will not embarrass you in any way, sir, but I have to throw this thing out. I said, okay, you go and handle it. I came, I had a discussion with Honorable Kutana. I said, if you don't withdraw it, I'll take it out. So, Rukutana moves to say, yes, this one, Honorable Land Attorney General, what do you say? Say no. I move that your Parliament allows me to remove, to withdraw this bill for further consultation. I said, no, you don't just withdraw like that. You have to justify it to the House. The rules require you to do that. So he spoke to it, his withdrawal. And after that, the members granted, we took the bill out of the order paper, out of Parliament completely. So that is also when I call him, when there are issues of this nature, I've called him about those things.
Do you feel that the relationship between a speaker and the executive is important?
It's very,
the executive
very, there's no competition. It's very important, you know. It's a cooperation. It's a cooperation. You have the executive arm. We have the legislative arm. In terms of public policy, it's only those two that are involved, not the judiciary so much. The judiciary will review in case there are disagreements. In case of this, there are two. And there are four components of the public policy cycle. There's formulation, approval, implementation, and oversight. It's a cycle. You formulate policy, somebody else is in charge of the approval. You approve, somebody else is in charge of implementation. You implement, somebody else is in charge of overseeing whether implemented according to the principles agreed, according to the frameworks agreed. You get the point. And this is a ping pong between the executive and Parliament. The executive formulates policy, Parliament handles the approval. Whether they have proposed a law is part of the policy. Whether they propose a budget is part of it. Whether they propose shift in policy, that is part of it. The approval is the responsibility of Parliament. And the approval process is a cooperation system. Because where Parliament has an issue with what has been proposed, they will call the minister. They will call the permanent secretary. They will call the technical people to come and explain and even show out areas of disagreement. Well, I said, no, this is not right, this is not right.
What would you say for critics, particularly the leaders of opposition? I think two of them going backwards. Wafula Ogutu has been one of them, Nandala Mafabi has been another, saying that this relationship creates a rubber stamp parliament.
No, you see, I think a rubber stamp simply means approval. I don't know any parliament which is not a rubber stamp. It is about approval. A rubber stamp, you put your seal of approval, and most times the rubber stamp, you stamp it. The question is what goes into that process before you stamp it. The executive will ask, what is the problem? What is the solution? Parliament will ask, was the problem properly identified? Is the solution the right one? Are there alternatives, better alternatives? How will it affect people? How will it affect rights, interest, and power relations? Those things I talked about earlier. How will it affect this formulation? Is this proposal going to upset anything? Is it going to adversely affect people? Is it one of those that we can change at the beams, okay? Or is it one of those things we should reject outright? That is the question that parliaments ask as a representative of the people. Once they have agreed and they have made changes that now find is okay for the people, as the representative of the people, they'll put the rubber stamp on it. So I don't know why this thing it's a rubber stamp parliament. Every parliament is a rubber stamp parliament because it must approve before it becomes policy.
What of when consensus and debate is done outside of the precincts of parliament in caucus and then...
It doesn't matter. Everybody caucuses. Everybody caucuses. And if you look at the... now you're going to make me take you the fundamentals of parliamentary practice and procedure. There are 5. 1, every member has a right equal to any other member in the House. 2, every proposition brought to Parliament must receive a fair and complete debate and a decision. 3, the will of the majority must carry, but the rights of the minority must be respected. And so those are the fundamental ones. The other 2 are about the individual being part of the whole and things like that. So these 3 are important. It does not matter whether I am in the opposition or in the government party. I am a member of parliament. I enjoy equal rights with every other member, whether we are few or whether we are many. And everything that comes there must receive a proper, balanced debate, full debate, and a decision. How you process that decision is that the will of the majority will carry. But by all means, accommodation must be made to the rights of the people who are in the minority. And the minority is not, by the way, in terms of debate, is not necessarily a political party. It's the minority on the idea, on the proposal. Sometimes you find that the people opposing the proposal are actually on the other side of the house. It has happened before. You report for parliament, you know about, these things. Sometimes the minority who are opposing this particular proposition is not even from the actual political party opposition. It's the opposition to the idea. That's what I'm referring to. So that's how you now come to phrase issues of minority reports. Because you are considering that principle, then you do minority reports and things like that. So it's a cooperation. So that's how this thing of rubber, it's used in a negative term, but all parliaments approve of parliaments. They approve. All financial initiative rests with the executive, particularly the president. Proposals must come from them when it relates to finances.
Jacob Oulanyah, very finally, what does the ideal parliament look like for you?
An ideal parliament is a people's parliament. An ideal parliament is a parliament which is representative in the sense, because the fundamental is that if you had a country of only 300 people, you would not need a parliament. They will sit and decide on their fate in one meeting. But because you have 46 million people, they cannot sit in one meeting. So you send representatives to take the interest of those ones. And remember, through the social contract, this group of 46 million people have already surrendered part of their rights in the social contract, surrendering issues of security, bigger infrastructural things to the government in the social contract. And in return, they expect security and other things. But all they want to do now is give a direction on what affects them. They don't want to be overregulated. Instead, they want to be facilitated to be able to survive better. So, an ideal parliament should function like the population. The problems are common. The interests are common. And we should find solutions that deal with interests of those people and their aspirations, rather than who they are, their tribes, their parties, their religion. So we should have interest-based politics, interest-based solutions to the problems. And when we do focus on interest, you cannot have division. You can all be on the same side. That's the kind of parliament I would want. Of course, there might be difference in the way you reach that conclusion. The routing might be different. Or the opposition, people in the actual opposition might want to take a different route. The people in government might want to take a different route. Actually, most of the issues that bring division and debate in parliament is about the routing, not the principle. Because the principle is national interest, service delivery to the people. The question of division is now, how do you define those? How do you get best service delivery? For us, we think if you do it that way, it will not work. For us, we think it will work. So that's why they debate it, but not on the principle.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. We've been speaking to Jacob Oulanyah, who is the Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Thank you so much for watching On The Spot. Have yourselves a good evening.